What's happening, everybody? Hope y'all are having good weekends. Hopefully, y'all are enjoying the football. It's in full swing, especially if you're, a college football consumer. You've got that all day today as well. But week one is tomorrow. The first full NFL slate of the season is upon us, which means ultimately it's time to sort out start-sit decisions for your lineup. Welcome to another episode of Facemask Fantasy. Again, hope everybody's doing well. If you have not caught me in recent weeks, the start-sit streams this year will be a members-only mode. So members are able to engage with the chat and ask start-sit questions. All of those details are in the description of this live stream, and I've been bringing it up in recent weeks just as a heads up. So you're free to watch, regardless of your stance of the channel, and I will be giving thoughts, like overarching thoughts in general, about a plan of attack this week. But with the lowest level membership on the channel, which is 99 cents a month, you get access to ask questions to these streams yourself. And if you've been around the block, I go in detail when it comes to your question when the situation calls for it. Again, all details in the description. And I've been just mentioning this over recent weeks, but if you haven't caught me, for just 99 cents a month, you'll get every start-sit stream. You'll get access to the chat, ask questions. You'll get called out by name. You'll know that I'm responding to you specifically, and I will give you as much detail as I think permits for your specific situation. So with that said, let's go ahead and get into the latest news. And then I'll give you my overarching thoughts in general for how to attack week one, which is always the weirdest one of the week, just because of the season, because there's so much uncertainty. We'll start with the results of the two games that have already played. Last night, the Eagles played the Packers in Brazil. Eagles coming out on top. The biggest news as it pertains to fantasy is the health of Jordan Love. Obviously, first and foremost, hopefully he's as good as he can be. The ACL is intact according to the MRI that was issued earlier today. So that is a best case scenario. It's better than, it could be a lot worse. So now we're looking at a severity of maybe 3 to 4 weeks. That is the Packers probably being optimistic, hopefully that he can return on the shorter end of the recovery timeline. It's possible he needs more time than that. Packers are optimistic it could be 3 to 4 weeks. We're not probably going to get more specific details around that injury and as far as the timeline beyond that for some time, a couple of weeks into the recovery timeline. So we know that Malik Willis is starting at least weeks 2 and 3 and probably week 4 for the Green Bay Packers. So as far as how that affects the rest of the offense moving forward will be more of a case-by-case basis, more of matchup-based than it is, Jaden Reed is a slam dunk, even though he looked spectacular against the Eagles last night. But we have to downgrade the Packers offense for a short time until Jordan Love is able to get back. Hopefully it's on the sooner side than the later side. Moving to Cincinnati, which has been the big talking point, I think, of the season thus far as going into week one. Bengals wide receiver Jamar Chase, he declared yesterday, Friday, that he was going to be a game-time decision for this game. And how much he plays would be based on basically what Jamar Chase wants to do. How comfortable he is out there, how frequently he wants to be out there. His availability tomorrow is incredibly volatile. And now he's again added to the injury report, or officially added to the injury report with an illness. That could just be smoke and mirrors. That could just be like a reason to get him on the injury report. He's officially listed as questionable. And generally speaking, you want to start your studs and just hope for the best, even in murky situations like this one. But if you drafted Jamar Chase with your first pick, you have to seriously consider not playing him tomorrow. He has not practiced much as he awaits his new contract. That situation is hanging over both his and the Bengals' head. It is clearly a distraction at this point. Otherwise, it would be done. And now he himself is declaring, well, we'll see how much I play, and the contract is actually a factor here. Now added to the injury report, he would be limited. Again, these are all what has been reported out to the media, to the general public. He would be limited. His availability would be limited even if he does play. It is pretty much impossible at this point to trust Jamar Chase. We will take this up to kickoff tomorrow. Again, I will be live 11 a.m. Eastern tomorrow, and we will address this situation off the top. But as of right now, you probably, not definitely, but you probably have to pull Jamar Chase from your lineup. You're already taking T. Higgins out of the lineup, who is now listed as doubtful for this game with an injury that has held him out of practice. You're taking him out of your starting lineup. This leaves things, as a result, incredibly dicey for Joe Burrow. Burrow is probably down, almost certainly down his number 2 receiver in T. Higgins tomorrow. Doubtful is like a 25% chance or less of playing, so it's not looking good for Higgins. And at this point, it's hard to feel good any which way you want to spin it about Jamar Chase. I do not think in confidence you can fire him up into your starting lineup tomorrow. So with that said, if you have Joe Burrow, first of all, in a super flex format, you have to likely leave him in. You are not in super flex formats, you are not going to be able to take Burrow out of your starting lineup. I would seriously doubt. If you have one of the top names, one of the top 5 or 6 names, and Burrow and somebody like a Kirk Cousins or a Jared Goff, which I would be a little surprised if you did in a Superflex redraft draft, because those guys are all going too close together for you to probably, in all likelihood, end up with all of them. If that's your case, you could pivot, but generally speaking, you're going to leave Burrow in as a starter in a Superflex format. In one quarterback, you probably need to move off of him. In one quarterback leagues, you probably have to move off of Burrow. What's going on, Crumply Heads? Good to see you, dude. Thank you for joining back on. As a member of the channel, appreciate it. This gets you access to all of the start sit streams. However many questions you have, whatever questions you have, happy to take all of them. Happy to work through all of them, whatever scenarios that might be playing out as far as other players that could be a part of the starting lineup for the entire season, for all of the start sit streams. Yeah. Appreciate the support. You get access to these guys. So whatever you have, whatever your situation is, let me know. And we'll cover it. We'll cover it in detail. So Burrow initially coming into the week was probably a top 6 or 7 play. Now he's probably down to we're hoping for the QB 11 or 12 performance. What's going on, dog? Good to see you, man. Appreciate the support. Whatever you got for me. Whatever you got for me as it pertains to start, sit, help, I got you. As far as, I'm not guaranteeing victory, but You'll get my process, you'll get my thoughts as it pertains to your specific situation. Um, Again, Burrow was initially like a top 6, top 7 option for this week. That is no longer the case. He's now more of like a low end QB1. We're hoping for like the QB11, QB12, maybe QB10 performance with a reduced wide receiver core going up against New England. Andre Yosivas, Trenton Irwin, Charlie Jones, Jermaine Burton, plus the 4 or 5 tight ends that they kept on that team. Like it's gonna be a group effort. It's gonna be a team effort for the Cincinnati pass catchers. Plus, I don't know. I guess I assume Chase Brown maybe gets a little bit more run tomorrow as the change of pace guy. Zach Moss is not bad at catching the football out of the backfield, but I think Chase is a little bit more of a spark plug. Chase Brown, not Jamar Chase. We know what Jamar Chase is, but Chase Brown might be needed for some big play ability tomorrow, a little bit more than what they were maybe planning for. So in deeper leagues, 12-team leagues that have deeper lineups, 14-team leagues even, Chase Brown is maybe a flexible play with them so weak or depleted, I should say, at wide receiver. So if you have Chase Brown, I don't know. It feels like both running backs are likely going to mix in a little bit more than they normally would. They should probably handle more opportunities because the Bengals need to, it's all hands on deck if they're almost certainly without Higgins. They're almost certainly without Higgins. And what type of confidence do we have in Jamar Chase tomorrow? Like if he even goes 15, 20%. I mean, I know he's a big time playmaker and all it takes is one play for him. But if he's in and out of the lineup, it almost feels like he's not feeling it right now without the contract. I don't know. Yeah. What type of effort are we getting from Jamar Chase? In this situation, in this specific circumstance, with him, he himself is claiming like he'll be limited. So I don't know. I don't think that you can confidently fire him up week 1 unless you have no other option. And I don't know how low that barrel is. And again, we'll take this up to kickoff tomorrow as far as his status. But the vibes are not good right now. I can't in confidence fire up Jamar Chase, which is crazy because you almost always have to just start your studs, start your best players, even in the bad times. But this feels like a situation to avoid until it gets resolved. Hopefully that happens sooner than later. Hopefully that happens sooner than later. Not a big surprise. Christian McCaffrey is fine, expected to play after missing some time during the offseason. We're okay there, but it was a newsworthy update to come down. DeAndre Hopkins is expected to play as of an hour ago. He missed time in the preseason training camp with a knee injury, but it sounds like he's going to go. He's a little dicey with the lack of practice time, but obviously it's DeAndre Hopkins. He's not what he used to be. He's not DeAndre Hopkins of old, but he can still do it. And he's a savvy vet at this point who still commands a lot of targets. He did last year. Calvin Ridley is in the fold. And is probably a guy that you feel a little bit better about tomorrow, given Hopkins' potential rust that we're dealing with coming into this game. But it's great that he's not going to miss any time. Hopkins was a steady 8th round pick-ish in drafts, maybe a 9th, 10th round pick with the injury, depending on leagues and how concerned they were about him, combined with his age. But Not going to miss any time. What, it looks like in shallower leagues, he's good receiver depth. In deeper leagues, he's an option for you to fire up. That's the latest that we have. Again, with Joe Burrow, pretty much anybody with rushing upside for me leapfrogs Joe Burrow in the rankings. That includes Jaden Daniels. That includes Caleb Williams for the weekly rankings. In one quarterback leagues, it's possible that you don't even have these guys if you have Burrow. You may have drafted a QB2 if you had Burrow because he was not expensive this year, at least not as expensive as he has been in seasons past. But if you did, a Jaden Daniels, a Caleb Williams, if you have those guys, you probably don't have Kyler Murray if you're starting someone like Kyler over Burrow regardless. But Jaden Daniels, Caleb Williams, I'm starting these guys over Joe Burrow, and I'm maybe considering somebody like Jared Goff as well, who is not as good, but he's playing at home in the dome, and has all his top options. Has Amon-Ra St. Brown, has Sam Laporta, has Jahmyr Gibbs, has Jamison Williams. We'll see what Jamison Williams can do week one. I think his first week one of his career. The third year wideout is playing in his first week one of his career. Let's see what he can do. I would probably play Goff over Joe Burrow. After that, it gets dicey. I'm in all likelihood not playing Kirk Cousins, Baker Mayfield, Matthew Stafford. If it's between Burrow and those guys, I will just play Burrow and hope for the best. But anybody with rushing upside at this point, I'm probably leaning toward over Joe Burrow in one quarterback leagues if they are available to you. Jaden Daniels, Caleb Williams. Kyler's probably starting over him regardless. Jared Goff. I would probably Goff doesn't have any rushing upside, but what he does have is his full complement of weapons, which is more than Joe Burrow can say right now. And it's a decently favorable matchup at home against the Rams. So I would take Goff over Burrow as well. Superflex, you have to start him. With week one, I've seen questions about, this receiver versus this receiver versus this running back. We have so little to go off of for week one. All we pretty much have is all we have right now as far as things to consider, factors, variables to consider going into this week's matchups is information from last season. That's pretty much all we have to go off of. And even then, which free agents departed? Who, if anybody, got traded from that situation, from that secondary, from that, who from that secondary, who from that linebacking core, who from that offensive line changed teams. So, did a strength, does it look like it became a weakness? Did a weakness on paper become a strength? So when it comes to week one, it's kind of just generally speaking, just start the dudes that you drafted first. Because this is the foundation that you theoretically built your team with. Week 6 or round 6, round 7, round 8. If your question is, do I start the guy I drafted in round 7 or the guy that I drafted in round 9? I'm going to need, at least for week 1, a really, really compelling argument about the guy that you drafted 2 rounds later. Again, we're drafting these guys based on the hope and the expectation that this is our foundation. So if you have 9 starting roster spots, obviously positional value factored in based on how your draft went, but start the dudes that were at the top of your draft, your specific draft. We don't know, was a tough matchup last year. Does it remain a tough matchup this year? So if something on paper looks dicey, looks worrisome for a guy that you drafted in the 7th round, just start that player over the guy in the 9th round that has a favorable matchup. Like, there's going to have to be a really compelling argument to consider a guy that you drafted later for at least week 1. For at least week 1. The one guy that you can consider, the one guy that comes to mind that you can consider who kind of continued to fly under the radar all through the summer, all up through the preseason and into all drafts essentially, is Jerome Ford. Jerome Ford has not been getting drafted like a starting running back this year. He's getting drafted like a guy who's going to be in a committee, but Nick Chubb is out guaranteed for the first 4 games. So regardless of what you think about Jerome Ford versus Nick Chubb and the future of the Browns backfield is irrelevant for the first 4 games because no matter what, Jerome Ford is the dude. So if you have him, who you probably drafted 10th round or later, that is a guy for a compelling argument playing at home for a guy to start, several rounds above another player that you drafted 3-4 rounds earlier. That would be the exception to the rule is a guy like Jerome Ford. That's a compelling argument for a guy that you drafted double-digit rounds who you can fire up this weekend. Cleveland's offense, however you feel about it, is intact, healthy, right? So considering he's going to get all of the running back opportunities, Donta Foreman will mix in. I believe, is Pierre Strong ready for this game? I need to check his availability because he did pick up an injury toward the end of the preseason. Oh, he's off the injury report. Okay. So he's been fine. So he'll mix in. Donta Foreman will mix in. But Jerome Ford is this team's starter. So he's the guy that you could conceivably fire up as far as late round picks go. See. The other thing to consider, as always, especially with kickers, because I know I get kicker questions, just double check weather reports if you know that your kicker is not playing in a dome, right? If he's playing in a dome, there's no weather to worry about, and those guys in a vacuum are players that you can confidently fire up. In Buffalo, for example, Tyler Bass has been a trendy pick, a trendy last round kick this weekend, attached to a good Bills offense at home against Arizona. They should have no problem scoring against that defense. But again, double check these little details. The winds in Buffalo are expected to be around 20 miles per hour around kickoff tomorrow. So while that's not necessarily like a terrible death sentence, it's a less than ideal condition. It's a less than ideal situation that you want to factor in when you're figuring out your kicker. Safer, you know, windless free conditions are significantly better than the alternative. So if you didn't draft like an anchor, an automatic guy like a Justin Tucker, a Harrison Butker, a Brandon Aubrey, just consider weather conditions in the home stadium that is where the game is being played. Again, like Buffalo, Tyler Bass is looking like a good pickup at kicker for anybody who missed on the big names, but potentially up to 20-mile-per-hour winds in Buffalo tomorrow. Slight concern, something to just reconsider when you're trying to factor in where you want to go when it comes to the starting kicker. Always, always, always look at the weather in the home stadium where the game is being played. Let me see. Jerome Ford, running backs that I would likely start him over. He was probably drafted after guys like Zamir White, Brian Robinson, Raheem Mostert, DeAndre Swift. Jerome Ford probably starts over all of those names. Jerome Ford probably starts over all of those names. Anybody higher than that, you can argue differently. Like, I mean, even a guy like David Montgomery, who is like an upper echelon, is he the best number 2 running back? Like a team's RB2? But he's going to be splitting work with Jahmyr Gibbs. Jerome Ford has this backfield to himself for at least the first 4 weeks. So, like, that is a fair enough assessment to, like, want to consider, how high do we want to climb with Jerome Ford? What's going on, E11? Good to see you, man. Who would I rather have between Brian Thomas and Keon Coleman? I really like Brian Thomas. I really like Brian Thomas. He was he was a first round pick this year. His measurables are like all the combine stuff is really strong, really excellent for Brian Thomas. Calvin Ridley is gone. Zay Jones is gone. They add Gabe Davis to Christian Kirk and Evan Ingram, if you want to include all the pass catchers. But man, Thomas is poised to fill probably Calvin Ridley's role as one of the mainstays on the outside for the Jaguars offense. Whereas Coleman might have that receiver room all to himself. Now, I like Khalil Shakir a lot at his cost. Keon Coleman, I guess, has the big play upside in this offense. How quickly it clicks for either of these guys, obviously, is yet to be seen. Brian Thomas's competition, top to bottom, is probably a little bit stronger with Christian Kirk and Evan Ingram, whereas Coleman's competition for targets is Dalton Kincaid, Curtis Samuel, who's dealing with turf toe last time I saw, and Khalil Shakir. So Kincaid, Shakir, Curtis Samuel on one hand for competition for targets, Christian Kirk, Evan Ingram, Gabe Davis on the other hand. I mean, I think I give that slight nod to, as far as difficulty level, I would give that slight nod to Brian Thomas. So Keon Coleman maybe has like a little bit clearer of a path to opportunities. But as far as the player straight up, I think for me, it's Brian Thomas. And he is generally going cheaper in drafts, or did go cheaper in drafts. Uh-oh. What the hell just happened to my camera? Shoot. Hang on. I don't know what just happened to